Tarnished ones of the lands between, and ashen ones of Lothric's castle. Mark with Kardavox Academy here, and we're trying something different. We're going to introduce a new type of video to the Kardavox Academy channel, and I'm going to tell you about it right now because you probably want to know. Either that or you've skipped ahead a minute and a half and you're not going to know what I'm talking about, and that's fine too. So, essentially, one of the great things about running a reaction channel is that I get to talk about a lot of stuff that I love. One of the bad things about running a reaction channel is, as you are fortunate enough to grow, you start to get the sense that you have a little less control over the videos that you pick, right? And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. However, I want to share with you all certain performances that I think are outstanding. When I'm doing a reaction video, I'm mostly focused on what I can bring educationally to the table, right? So I might not personally like the song, but I'm excited about the technique. I'm excited about sharing the information with you. But if you were to ask me, hey, would you put that on your playlist? I'd say absolutely not, right? So I want to show you all songs that I've heard before, but that absolutely blow my mind, and that every time I listen to them, as a vocalist myself, as a vocal coach, I am dumbfounded at how wonderful and amazing these performances are. These videos, they're still going to be the kind of reaction format, but now I'll be able to prep you and show you my excitement based on what I truly deeply think is amazing. So we're going to start today we'll come up with a cool segment for it. My business partner, Alex, he's good at coming up with quirky names, so maybe we'll work that in here. But we're going to call these the goats of all goats. We're going to call these the Kardavox Academy favorites. I don't know. We'll call it something. But today, we're going to start off with one of my favorite vocal performances of all time, and that is Vale of Pnath, Accursed. And I'm very excited to talk to you all about it because I have probably I would not be surprised if I've put like a thousand or more plays on this song since it was released, if not more. But if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. I am a metal vocalist myself, have been for roughly 14 years. I don't really remember exactly when I got started, but it was a long time. It was like 2008, 2009-ish. And I've been a vocalist for a while. I'm in a band called Kardavox. We released an album on Metal Blade. You can check it out. It's a lot of fun. And I'm a metal vocal coach. I specifically, as a full-time job, train people how to make all sorts of types of sounds safely and efficiently for years to come, making sure that they sound cool and they're also not hurting their voice. That's a big part of it. And if you're new to the channel, please feel free to check out some of my other stuff. But check out this one because you're here. You clicked on it. Hey, thanks for that. Appreciate it. But if you really love it, like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot. And feel free to talk to me in the comments. Feel free to tell me why you also agree that this is one of the best metal vocal performances of all time, or why you maybe think it's low tier and I'm wrong. I would love to hear about that as well. You're not going to change my mind, but it'd be interesting to hear your perspective. We also have a Patreon. You can check that out. We do a lot of cool stuff on our Discord channel, which, by the way, I was talking with some of our Discord members the other night and my business partner today. And like I said, here on the channel, I am focused on bringing education and talking to you about vocal technique. I don't view this channel as like my opinion on the songs or anything like that. So if ever you're like, but what songs does Mark actually like? Or what are his harsher criticisms? That's where you're going to hear it because we'll be up like really late at night and I'll be like, this song is trash. And it can be kind of fun because sometimes people in the community agree with me and sometimes they're like, nah, you're stupid, bro. And I'm like, wait a minute. How dare you? It's a lot of fun. Feel free to check it out. But anyway, let's just go ahead and get into it. I'm feeling goofy. I'm feeling kind of casual today. We got a baby coming in could be 30 minutes, could be a week. So my whole brain right now is just a whirlwind. So let's just talk about why I think Vale of Pnath is Accursed, or Vale of Pnath Accursed is one of the coolest vocal performances of all time. Here we go.
Time is not here.
So this is a good place for us to stop. I have in my head, since I've heard this song many times, thousands of times, I have in my head a lot of the places that I want to pause. So Vale of Pnath has had a handful of vocalists, and I believe that this was Reese, who was on vocals for this release. And there are some things that are being done that I think are extremely phenomenal. You've heard me talk in my videos before about how, while I think it's very impressive and very cool, and I will always be excited by vocalists who have hundreds of thousands of individual techniques, although sometimes I think in the metal vocal world we use that term a little too loosely. But that's just me. While I think that that's really cool, just as a point of personal preference, I'm oftentimes more impressed when somebody is using a singular technique and adding a lot of nuance in it by their voicings. Now, there are a couple things in here that I also really enjoy, right? But my favorite part is when he says, I believe the lines are, it's been a while since I read the lyrics, time is not here. And that E is super, it's very breathy. In fact, in kind of like the meta, we may even consider it too breathy. However, the fact that it's this wide mouth, this grit teeth, and you can hear that the space around the vocal folds is relaxed. All that tension, or I should say all that closure, that's a better word, all that closure is happening here. Right? The tongue is taking up space in the vocal cavity, in the mouth, right? We don't have to always use crazy words. We just call it what it is. We just call it the mouth. The tongue is taking up more space in the mouth, and that narrow passage that's above the tongue and the hard palate leading to the soft palate, that's where the constriction of the airflow is predominantly happening, right? We have openness in the back, which protects our vocal anatomy, and then we have that really narrow passage that gives us that sort of like tearing paper, like type of sound. I absolutely love it. I love the gallop as well. The way that the vocals are sort of like trotting through the song. It's absolutely phenomenal. We've heard a couple areas where lows and mids are used as texture, but they're very far back. There are a lot of bands where in, the first 40 seconds of a song, we would have heard lows, highs, mids, tunnels, inhales probably. And here we have just been able to sort of enjoy one really delicious ingredient being celebrated for what it is. And at this point, it's high vocals. And really this whole song is just a celebration of high vocals. So I want to go back a little bit so you can hear that E with that like little bit of extra air put on it. Love it. And then we're going to keep going. Let's go here. That's another really great section as well. So this song definitely is building on like a deathcore style, clearly, right? And one of the things, like if you are a vocalist and you are interested in fitting into the deathcore genre, or you're an aspiring vocalist, one of the things that can give you that hallmark sound, right? Because we know that not all metal vocals are going to sound like they belong in every genre. That's why we talk about like, he sounds like an old school death metal vocalist, or, he sounds like, like a black metal vocalist from like, the late 90s. Like that has a very specific sound to it as well. One thing that can kind of help you really fit into that deathcore niche is not just an over, how do I want to say this? Not necessarily just doing a bunch of mouth shapes, not just playing with your embouchure, but playing with your embouchure in such a way that it accentuate the vowels that you're on, right? So there's this one section right where I pause. He says, "You will lead the massacre." And let's think about that word, massacre. That's kind of a tough word. That rhotic like sound, that can be kind of a tough vowel to scream, especially if you're newer. Once you get it, it's easy. But because there's a lot of occlusion in the mouth, the tongue is up and kind of fat. There are two different ways that we make R's. There's like the retroflex where we're actually kind of pulling the tip of our tongue back. And then there's, I'm forgetting the term, but there's that more like rhotic sound. That's not the right term, but that's what I'm going to say, where the back of your tongue is raised, right? And you can figure out the way that you say it by saying an sound and then stopping and breathing in real quick. Or Did the tip of your tongue get cold or did the back of your tongue get cold? Well, that tells you which R you use. And you can amaze all your friends with that little bit of trivia that you just learned. But if we take that he sort of like shifts that vowel to the front and he makes it you will lead the massacre, and it sounds delicious. It's like just like this. You will lead the massacre. That you will lead the massacre. It's just I would not have thought to do that. I would have been on that you will lead the massacre, and I probably would have been. I'm gonna be real. If it were me, I might have gone a little bit basic. I probably just would have been like, I don't know, I'll tunnel the A. Massacre. Right? That's probably how I would have done it. Versus this, which I think is a little bit more interesting. It's got a little bit more flair on it. Go ahead and listen to that, and then we'll keep going. Very cool stuff. One thing I really appreciate about his vocals as well is that he utilizes that gallop in a way that he gallops and he uses like these like, and I could be using the wrong term. I'm not a drummer, so feel free to correct me. But in my head, I hear like this dotted quarter note type thing going on that he does a lot, or other things. But my point is this: he gallops when it's appropriate, right? This song starts to do something a little bit more steady, and so he'll start to gallop to kind of pull you along, right? One thing when you're writing really complex tracks like this is that if the song starts to simplify a little bit, now this is when I say simplify, I don't mean that as a bad thing. It can be really important to, if you have a song that's entirely maximal, to give moments of clarity, moments of a little bit of slowing down, right? So if you're like doing all this crazy stuff, which by the way, this riff, amazing, this like sort of like panning, so sick, and I love that production, where the notes pan. And then you move from that, and if it feels a little bit more simple, the listener can get a little bit lost, or their attention can wane. So when he's doing it pulls you back. It's like something's pulling you under the current, saying like, no, you're not gonna escape. You're not gonna escape. These waters. Like, you're stuck here, and I love that. Again, his vowels are just exactly what they need to be in at the right time. Another thing that we run into in deathcore a lot is, and this is no surprise, people constantly being maximal, right? So there's one word, I don't remember what it is, but there's one word where he like starts in an and opens up to an a. And a lot of deathcore vocalists, and rightly so, I wouldn't blame any of them for it, right? A lot of them would go, like, see how I went from one extreme to another, all the way down, all the way up, right? Or I should say all the way forward, all the way out. Right? It was just a little touch. It was a little tiny touch. Just a little sprinkling. It was just like that. So you hear him going for these techniques, but he's not putting all of his cards on the table at once, right? Very, very cool. I have so much respect for this performance because I don't feel, sometimes when I listen to metal vocals, I feel like they feel like they have to prove that they're brutal, right? They're like, let me hit you with everything I can in 5 seconds because, I got to compete with all these other brutal guys out there. And I gotta do what I can to like blow this listener's mind. I feel like this guy, he's like, I know I'm good. I know I'm good at this. I know I'm good at metal vocals. I have the confidence that I need to play the cards as I wish to, right? Very cool. Very cool. Let's keep going. I also love that wasn't a bleh. It was an right? A lot of times, and this is a common thing, I've done it, lots of people do it. I think it's cool. I like when bands do this. But when there's a change in the song or at the end of a fill, or, at the beginning of a big section, people will give a bleh. Like, like Architects, obviously, everybody knows Architects for their blehs, but you hear it a lot in deathcore as well. It's the bleh, 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 right? Bleh. But for him, like, I almost feel like it almost sounds like nonchalant. It's just like a bleh, right? Bleh, bleh. And it's like almost casual in a way. And I really like that. I really like that so much. Now, a lot of people might be watching this, right? And there may be a lot of thoughts going on. Your first thought, or some people might be out there thinking like, how do I do these high vocals without tiring out? Because, having taught metal vocals full time, oh gosh, I say that like it's this really long amount of time. I've been helping people for a really long time, but as far as like full-time job, probably about 3 years, maybe a little bit more. But in doing this, one thing I've learned is that highs are very difficult for lots of people, right? Whether they're false chord or fry, something about activating or accessing that headspace is kind of difficult for people. So a couple tips that I can give you, and this is kind of like regardless of technique, right? We need to kind of think of our voice coming from this space. And it's really good to practice this with your speaking voice, right? Now, you'll hear a lot of people, and I've said this too because it's true, lean on nasality, right? Lean on this sort of nasality, like this nasal sound. I also like to think of it as giving my voice like an unruly amount of twang, like more twang than you would ever really want to sing with. Hey, hello, my baby. Hello, my darling. Hello, my ragtime gal. Right? That sort of sound. Now, here's the thing with vocal exercises. It's not just about how it sounds, it's about how it feels, right? If you're tiring out on your high vocals, chances are you're trying to make this twangy, sort of like small sounding shape. Chances are you're trying to make it by squeezing your vocal muscles, right? You can hear the difference. Check this out. So I'm going to, and I say this a lot in my videos, like, oh, I can hear that his glottis was relaxed, or, oh, I can hear that he wasn't overactivating his neck muscles. And I want to teach you how to do that as well, right? It's quite intuitive actually, and it's not even that hard. So here we go. I'm going to squeeze my vocal muscles to create the illusion of nasality. And this is where a lot of my students, if they're like, man, I need some help with my high vocals, they hurt. Again, false chord or fry, this is a commonality. This is usually the first thing I look for because it's usually part of the equation. But if any of my other metal vocal coach colleagues are watching this, make sure that when you find the thing you suspect, you continue looking. Because if you have an idea and you only look at that, and then once you find it, you think that that's the whole problem, you're training based on confirmation bias, and you may not be hitting all of those students' needs in that moment. So you have to look holistically, right? Just a bit of advice. Anyway, so this is always look past your first hypothesis. This is what it sounds like if I strain my vocal folds. Okay, if I strain my vocal folds, yeah, right? Already that didn't feel very good to me. I wouldn't want to do that for very long. A lot of this comes from, and I'm not necessarily against this exercise on its own, but I do think that this is an exercise that needs guidance versus like just throwing it out there. But a lot of it comes, my students tell me they find themselves this way because of the lifting a box exercise or getting punched. There are two exercises you see. I have used them with students before. They are not bad exercises, but without guidance, people can turn them into something that they shouldn't be. There are these two things. This is especially to get like a fry sound going. It'll be like, okay, pick up a heavy box. Huh, huh, huh. And you can hear a little bit of that fry just showing up, or like you're getting punched. Huh, huh, huh. The problem with those, and where a lot of students get wrong, is they require active feedback from the student you're talking to, right? Because at the end of the day, I can't feel what my student feels. So I have to say, okay, you made the right sound, but how did it feel? Did you feel a lot of pressure under your vocal folds? If they say like, yeah, there was a ton of pressure, then you as the vocal coach can say like, okay, cool. This exercise may work for them, but it needs context. And that's really important. So that's what that sounds like. You will lead the massacre. You will lead the massacre. Now listen to when I'm relaxing all of this and I'm just using my oral space, right? Yeah, you will lead the massacre. Totally different, right? Do you hear how it's opened up? It's opened up. That's what's going to allow my high vocals to be comfortable. So I'm just like, I don't know all these lyrics, but if I'm like, dry, tired, teeth, crossing the body, breathing out, dusting the lungs, I gotta take without a sound. And then just return to my normal speaking voice. No issue, right? That's what's going to allow you to do it. Understanding that your nasality and your twang, at least for this, right? Because this is a little different than normal singing technique. If you try to use this for normal singing technique, you're not going to hurt yourself, but people are going to be like, yo, don't quit your day job, because you're going to be like, baby, lock the doors and turn the lights down low. And people aren't going to want to listen to that. But for metal vocals, it's valuable. So something to keep in mind. I got off on a tangent, but that's what I do when I'm excited. I'm kind of a tangential guy. All right, let's keep going. See what I'm fucking saying? See what I'm saying? This whole song, the first 2 minutes and 10 seconds, almost the first half of the song has been exclusively highs. Now, okay, well, there have been layers and stuff. Now we have some more like, we've dropped the sound, right? And so I remember the first time I listened to this, I really enjoyed the song, right? Because I cut my teeth on a lot of metal where the vocals were much more simple than they are today. But I remember listening to this song and I'm in my car. I'm in it doesn't matter what car it would have been at that time. But I'm, driving home from work and I'm like, and I'm listening and the vocal style changes. And I remember just being like, what? It's kind of like that same feeling of when you're live and you see the band playing and then all of a sudden the guitarist starts dropping some disgusting lows along with the vocalist and you're like, he can do it too, right? It was that sort of same thing. I was impressed because he had not put all his cards on the table at the beginning, right? Now, sometimes you can. Listen, everyone who knows this channel knows that Travis Ryan is my favorite metal vocalist. Is he the best? I don't know, but he's my favorite. And that guy wears his technique on his sleeve, right? So I'm not saying it's always bad to be maximal in your style, but I am saying as an artist, it's valuable to know the different ways that you can deliver your message to your audience, and that sometimes restraint is the way that we build, the way that we impress people. A really good example of this is, I don't remember the band, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you, because again, I don't do criticism on the channel. I do criticism in the Discord group. But before this, we were listening to a new release, my business partner and I, and it was like 2 seconds into the song, and we already had like this massive choir, and we had like this, synthy, like, because symphonic deathcore is like the thing now, which is fine. I love it. It's nothing wrong with it, and so it's like, okay, cool. And then 2 minutes into the song, it's like still like, and it was like, oh, okay, like I figured this out already. Like I got it. Not a bad song, but like I feel like if that had come in maybe a little bit later, I would have been like, oh shit, okay, I got to pay attention. So, and again, leading on that, you will lead the massacre. No, you will lead the massacre. So sick. Love it. He doesn't quite tunnel it in that way, but it sounds great. Let's keep going. Oh. Let's talk about what the vocalist did there. Not a fucking thing. And that's sick. That is sick. Now, this video is a lot more of an opinion piece, than an educational piece. But I don't know if that's true. We've talked a lot about nasality. We've talked about exercises. We've talked about various valuable mindsets in teaching. So yeah, there's been a lot of educational content here. But he just changed the game by dropping his tone, and then he shut up. How cool is that? Like I feel like the confidence that exudes from that, at least the way that I receive the song, the way that I hear it, is awesome. He said what he needs to say. I feel like as a vocalist, now, of course, I'm projecting a little bit because I was not in the studio when this was written. I don't know how these are recorded. I don't know how this was written, but I feel like, whoever wrote the lyrics, whether he did or whether the band did, because that's a very common thing, they knew they had a strong song. They knew that they didn't have to have somebody like, every 5 seconds being like, like they didn't need that, right? Because they got sick riffs. They've got amazing drummer. The bass is amazing and clunky sounding and just thunky and good. And so they had like all these maximal vocals and they were able to walk away. One of the best pieces of advice that was ever given to me. I've talked about this before. The band that I am in, Kardavox, we flew out one of my favorite vocalists, Jim Martin, from Indiana. He's the vocalist for a band called Aegean. And I was like, I gotta figure out what to do in this part. And he looks at me and he's like, you could just shut the fuck up for a second. And it was so funny. He was being nice about it, but it was true. He was right. And I realized in that moment that like, just because I'm the vocalist doesn't mean that I have to dominate every section, right? Now, there are some bands that did that and still do that very, very well. But if you are a vocalist and if the song is not asking you for vocals, maybe don't do vocals. It's interesting because there's like so much of this idea of the front man in vocals. And I think that that's a valid idea. Like, let's be honest, Lorna Shore has a front man. There's no two ways about it. And that's fine. That's great. But I think that another way, if this fits you as a vocalist better, this is how I think of myself as a vocalist. I play support. I think of myself as a support class, right? So, if we had like, the typical MMO style lineup, right? I would not be the tank. Well, okay, depending on which game you play and the proper etiquette, I would not be the tank rushing in forward and pulling all the mobs, right? I'd be the guy back here buffing this dude's armor, and I'd be the guy back here healing that dude, and I'd be the guy back here, putting fire damage on that guy's sword. I'm giving the party what they need as time goes on, and that's really how I view myself. And how this song sounds to me. Doesn't mean you can't be awesome. Doesn't mean you can't be badass. But it does mean that you don't always have to like Leroy Jenkins every song, if you know what I mean. This section coming up here is really cool. I want you to pay attention to the narrative style that he uses and the way he takes his technique, and rather than projecting it and sort of belting it out, he pulls it back and he uses it to storytell. There are some really cool layers going on. Let's check it out. So that was amazing. Also, I love that really, like, I think it's the snare, right? But that really like pong, like that snare is cool. I like it. I know some people get irritated at open snares or snares that have like a pong sound to them. I think it sounds great. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments below. Saint Anger, open snare. Was I cool with that? Truth be told, I didn't know enough about music at the time to even care. But this sounds a lot better than that, I'll tell you. So two things that I really love about that section. One, okay, well, a lot of things I love about that section. Number one, I love how he came back, not necessarily with restraint, because that was very attention grabbing, right? That was very attention grabbing. But you know, he's gone through. He's gone from like, you know, here, and now he's more like storytelling. Now he's more doing things like, you know. Again, I don't know the lyrics, but he's saying like, "May this low voice, this sort of quiet," right? And there were some sections I kind of was signaling, if you saw me, to watch the mouth shape. One thing that he does that's really cool, and it's interesting because if any of my students are watching this, especially my students who are beginners, they're probably like, "Mark, you asshole. You're always telling me that my mouth is too closed, and now you're telling me that this guy sounds good because he's screaming through a closed embouchure." To which I say, good call. But you know, a lot of these fundamental rules, once we get proficient enough and once our body learns to kind of absorb the shock, I should say, of different techniques, we can sort of break the rules a little bit. Like one of the coolest sounds out there that I love it is a high vocal through grit teeth, you know, so I think that just sounds so sick, especially when other people do it. Now, I don't know if he's going full on grit teeth, but he's like taking his I, and he's closing his mouth on it. And it sounds super cool. Then for like the second half, he then moves open. He opens up the embouchure a little bit, which I think is super cool as well. So again, we're getting moments of contrast. Now there's some EQ on here. There's some other things going on that make it sound kind of far away and like, you know, sort of ominous underneath. Again, I don't know a lot about vocal production, so I can't really speak to that, but I can say I saw that this was Dave Otero, no surprise, because it sounds great. But that was a very strong choice. I don't know if that was more him or the band or them working collaboratively, but that was a very strong choice, especially because what's going to come up. You know, it's fun knowing the song ahead of time. I'm really enjoying this, actually. This is a breath of fresh air, because sometimes, like the first time reaction, there's always like, man, everybody knows this song already, and if I don't talk about the one little like whistle backflip sow cow fry that existed for 45 sec or like 0.45 seconds between like a boop boop, people will be like, "Why didn't you talk about the part I like?" But this part, I know the song already, so I can talk about all the parts I like. This is nice. I like this. Let's keep going. Oh. What a good ending! What a good ending. What a great ending. So, my wife's working from home today. Hopefully she's not on a call. But, all right, I got to calm myself down here. So, there are a lot of things I love about that. You can kind of hear the gallop, right? Because there's all this cool build, all these sort of things sort of floating in, and then I love the sort of fade into that again, it's not a bleh, it's like a cough, it's like a and that sort of like so cool. I mean, I'm sure they did with that with production as well, but I just love that sort of like phantasmal approach that has when it comes in. I think that is a really classy choice. And then he gets that sort of like, I wish I had better term, but I wish I knew more about drumming and rhythm and all that. I just don't. But that bam 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 bam, that predictable sort of like, it gives it sort of a polyrhythmic feel, but it's not like overly complicated, right? That just kind of pulls you back in, because a lot of these complicated things happen compositionally, musically, and then he does something a little bit more predictable to anchor you. to anchor you, right? Check it out. It's such a and that's the thing I think about when I'm writing, right? Now, he does it really, really well, but I'll think to myself, like, there are times when I want to be attention grabbing, and there are times where I want to be the anchor of the song, the thing that the listener can kind of bob their head to and maybe mouth along with in the car. And this is such a good example of this. Check this out. So freaking good. Yeah, and that last like yeah is so cool. One thing you can do. Oh, I never noticed that. Willow tip. I don't know what willow tip is. Willow tip time. Huh, cool. Anyways, willow tip is probably something everybody else knows about, and I look like an idiot. What's new? So one thing you could do if you really want to make your vowels sort of stick out, I should say, we oftentimes think about vowels as end goals, right? So when we think about like, and okay, let me say this coherently because I'm very excited. And when I get excited, I sort of jabber. That's not a good combo. Like being somebody who like speaks on camera for a living, but then also digressing nonstop. So let's bring it back in. Oftentimes we think of our vowels as static states that we snap between. This is sometimes true, especially when you are, or this can sometimes feel true, especially when you're doing really, really fast vocal sections. However, when we move between vowels, we're sliding between them, like, right? So like, let's take the word hate, for example, because, you know, it's metal and anger. Rah. That's a bunch of different positions put together. I start here, eh. I end here, e. But I'm not saying hate. That's not how it's pronounced, at least with my accent anyway. We all know that different accents will approach this differently. But the concept is the same no matter what your accent is or what language you speak. This is just like a phonetic universal. I have to slide. Hate. It's a quick slide, right? It's a diphthong, essentially. Separate sounds creating their own single syllable, right? I think I'm using that word. My phonetics classes were a while ago. But if we think about the way that our vowels slide around and we start to see them as a much more of a liquid thing, we can make our vowels more interesting. Like, let's pick a random word. Let's pick a random word. All right, I've got this thing. I got a bank document I need to sign. That happens sometimes when you open a new account, I guess. Signatures. We need these signatures. Okay, cool. So let's signature. Chur is good. Chur is good. Ooh, chur is great because we start off with, first of all, that ain't how it's spelled, but that's how we pronounce it. Signature, right? Chur, and then It feels like it's just but when I say it, and if you want to be a vocalist of any kind, but again, deathcore, this is a very like genre identifying thing. You're gonna sit down and you're gonna think about your vowels a lot. You're really gonna dissect vowels like crazy. I'm actually saying what sounds like CHYUUR, chur. So if I think to myself, okay, that's how I pronounce the word. When I say it real fast, it's hard to pick up. But again, by like taking the microphone to my own speaking voice, which that's what you should base it on. You should base it on the way that you talk. I can feel that there's like a little y in there, right? So cheer. Let's say I want to translate this to a metal scream, and I really want to accentuate that. What I'm going to do is with my speaking voice, and there are different methods for this. With my speaking voice, I'm going to slide forward. Cheer, right? Sounds like I'm drunk, or sounds like I'm, the YouTube videos put on like 0.5 speed. Cheer. Okay, so my positions are E, year. what's something cool I could do with that? Year. What if I over exaggerate it? Year, right? So if I take that, now let's do it with a high, because this song is all high. That's kind of cool sounding, right? That's interesting. That's a lot more interesting than just saying the word. So if I take it, let's give it kind of like a signature. Kind of cool, right? Signature. Ooh. Signature. That's a cool spot. Signature. That sounds cool, right? So you can play around with vowels, and you can think of them as sliding, like you can think of these phonetic sounds as sliding between each other, being very liquid, being very sloshy, and that'll open up a lot of doors for creativity. So anyway, that's 42 minutes. Holy. So yes, Vale of Pnath, Accursed. This is one of my favorite vocal performances of all time. This song never gets boring to me. I love it. I think it's one of my favorite metal songs ever written. And I hope you all enjoyed it too. And even if you disagree, if it's not which like, you can't really disagree with the fact that like, I love it. And I'm not objectively saying it is the best. Cause like, let's be real. Whenever somebody says to me, this song is the greatest song ever written, I'm just like, what metrics are you even using to measure that? Like, how can you objectively say it is the best? So this is very subjectively my favorite, one of my favorite vocal performances, and one of the songs that I think for my own tastes is one of the best ever written. But tell me what you think. Do you think so? Do you think it's a little bit boring? What are your thoughts? Like, share, and subscribe. Blah, blah, YouTube mumbo jumbo that we all have to say. And if you want more fun, if you want more fun, spicy takes, join the community. We have a lot of cool people there. That's all I got. I've been talking long enough, and I got other stuff to do. I got some TikToks to film, some emails to do. It's a life. It's a life. And I appreciate you all for being a part of it, because it makes it worth doing. Many thanks. Much love. I'm out.